Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. I just want to welcome the Holy Spirit into this conversation so that as Gill and I talk about art and Puerto Rico and food and culture and life, that we get a deeper understanding of what it is to create and be great at it. And so, Gill, I welcome you into the conversation.
Okay.
Beautiful. So tell me, man, where are you from?
Well, I'm from the Bronx. Like I said, my parents are from Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico. My mother was born in Naranjito.
Uh-huh.
And my father was born in Morovis.
Okay. Where on the island is that?
Gosh, both of them are somewhere in the middle of the island. I only visited Naranjito and Bayamon when I went there, when I was very young.
Nice. Okay. I used to live in Bayamon for about, I guess I lived there about 2 years.
Okay.
And then in Atare for about a year. I guess it was Bayamon for about 3 years. And then in Atare for a small period of time. I just spent so much time down there that it just felt like I lived there for very long. And my father is from San Lorenzo.
Uh-huh.
And my mother is from Jauco. In Ponce. And so I believe my mother was born in the Bronx as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So you lived your whole life there then?
In the Bronx, yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in the old Lincoln Hospital.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And so what are you currently working on, dude?
Well, basically, I've been working in my sketchbook. I keep a sketchbook to do gouache paintings. And I really wanted to practice on the gouache. A long time ago, I did a lot of oil painting, and that's what I really love to do. But when my children were born, I put aside the oil paintings because I was concerned about the solvents and everything. And even though I would love to go back to it, I just haven't done it so far. And so the closest thing to it would be, for me, would be the gouache. Now, there's acrylic, but I like gouache a lot more.
Wow. So when we go to your website, we see all your work. That's all gouache?
No, it's a mixture because at some point I also took up digital art.
Okay.
Yeah, but even before then, before I went into the gouache, I spent a lot of time doing transparent watercolor. Gouache is opaque watercolor, and so it's handled a little bit differently. It's a kind of to me, a cross between working in watercolor and working in oil paint, because I can build up the paint and over layers rather than like opaque layers, rather than like watercolor, which be transparent layers.
Yeah, because in the gouache, for anyone who isn't aware of it, gouache is very similar to watercolor, but it has like a chalk inside of it, correct?
Right.
Makes it very thick. Or maybe shouldn't say thick, but opaque.
Right.
That's cool, man. And so like, so you're working in your sketchbook? Are you working in your sketchbook with the gouache? Is that how you're doing that?
Yeah. What I do is I work a 9 to 5, so I don't work an art job. Occasionally, I get illustration work, and I do that digitally. But while I work a 9 to 5, I work in a room by myself, and what I do is on my lunch hour, I'll just close the door and I'll paint in gouache, and I'll have that time for myself. Sometimes it carries over. I bring that home and continue to work it at home. But most of the time, I do it there, and so I get into like a daily routine of working in my sketchbook, and I'll choose a photo or a reference that I usually take myself
Mm-hmm.
to work from. There are other times I'll find some other like royalty-free reference photos because in my sketchbook I'm just concerned about practicing. There are
Yeah.
times where I'll take some time to do something at home on some other board, in gouache or maybe something like I also use casein now and then, which is similar to gouache.
Mm.
So I'll use that and I'll work on something bigger, a bigger project. But most of the time, I'm keeping to my sketchbook religiously. I'm always working in that and keeping to the discipline of always keeping like every day I work in it.
Mm. That's beautiful, man. And do you? And then is that daily practice you do during your lunch? Do you do some before you go to work as well, or is it primarily just at that
No,
lunchtime?
occasionally I do some before I go to work, but a lot of the times, what's become easier for me
Mm-hmm.
is when I wake up and I just go to my computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll do something on my tablet. I have a monitor. Initially, I bought a Cintiq monitor,
Yeah. Yeah.
but then I wanted something bigger, and I bought a similar, another brand rather than Wacom.
Welcome. Yep.
But it was, I researched for a decent brand as long as I can get a screen that was much bigger to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'll just wake up in the morning and it's easy just to go to my computer and just start working on something.
That's nice, man. So what is it that you do for your 9 to 5?
I work in like a print shop. I
Oh,
work at a
okay.
nonprofit and I do whatever print works they have for me to do.
Okay. And did you do like graphic work there, or is it just like the
No, no,
pre-press
no.
type of?
Yeah, it's just what everything is done in their marketing department.
Uh-huh.
At a while back, a few years back, they had asked me to do some work for them, and I got paid for on just on a freelance basis for their
Mm-hmm.
marketing department. But apart from that, they had their own marketing department to do their graphic works. I'm an illustrator. I mean, artist, illustrator. I don't do the graphics design stuff.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, you're totally an illustrator, man. I love this work. I'm just enjoying like having it in front of me here.
Thank you.
Um, so tell me, like, what's your story? Like, where'd you come from? Like, when did you discover that you had this sensitivity to being awesome?
Well, as far as drawing is concerned now, I've always drawn through school. It's like you find yourself a bunch of around a bunch of kids that like the same things.
Mm,
For me, it was comic books, and at a young age we all drew our own comic. They were kind of silly, because some of my friends drew stick figures, others drew more than stick figures, and there was always, one hero meets another, and hey, let's fight, and we
mm-hmm,
did comic book based on that. It wasn't deep on the writing, but it was fun to do, and so the first artist I was drawn to was the artist in the comic books that I saw, and I learned a lot from John Buscema.
mm-hmm,
I remembered buying when the book first came out, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way,
mm,
and also there were artists like Neil Adams and Ernie
mm-hmm,
Wrightson, and that was basically what I followed. When I went to high school, I found myself in the High School of Art and Design,
mm-hmm,
and I learned a lot more. I really lucked out as far as having some great instructors there.
mm-hmm,
One of them is an artist by the name of Max Ginsberg. The one who mainly influenced me was an artist by the name of Erwin Greenberg. Erwin Greenberg, Erwin Greenberg and Max Ginsberg had a early morning paint group where a bunch of us would gather before school started, and
mm-hmm.
we would work in oil paints from the model,
Oh wow.
and that's how we and then I through we called him Greenie, through Greenberg,
Mm-hmm,
we learned a lot about classical artists,
mm,
and so my taste started to change. I still like the comic book stuff, and I still do now, but my world kind of broadened. I learned about John Singer Sargent. I learned
Mm-hmm.
about Sorolla. I learned about Velasquez. I learned about illustrators that I've never heard of, Howard Pyle, Dean
Yeah.
Cornwell, and the list goes on. I mean,
Yep.
it's a long list because, through high school, I basically spent my high school in this man's class.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from that,
Mm.
so I got a lot out of that as far as art education
Mm-hmm.
and also direction and finding out what I wanted to do as an artist because it changed from wanting to do these heroic figures, which I still find fun and I love seeing what other people do with it. And sometimes I sketch those type of characters, but I like doing real people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I turned my attention towards the life around me rather than what you would find in the pages of a comic book.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I there was a Van Gogh painting where he painted this little this boy,
Uh-huh.
and the way he designed it in the energy, if you will, of like almost like a king, but it was this poor boy, right?
Right, right,
And uh, and I always thought that was beautiful. Um, I was like, man, I want to do a series like that. Just like people who have this incredible ability in something, but they're just like quote unquote everyday people.
right.
And I was like, I want to title it. What was it? Street Kings, I think it was. Um,
Hmm.
just having that authority over something, but being very very close to the earth. And
Right.
so I like that. That's kind of the direction where you're rather than going for those fantasy heroes, you're looking at the people around you and honoring them.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you look around and you're um, what kind of subjects are you looking for specifically? I mean, there's all kinds of people, and things around you that you couldn't paint, but like, what are the things the patterns, the things that often kind of grab your attention?
Well, I kind of let it find me
Mm-hmm.
because rather than look for something, life is full of different things and different experiences, so different people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to look for different things, and when I look around, I don't like a lot of the times I sketch people on the trains,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have a choice as far as who sits in front of me,
Okay.
and it's a matter of looking at the individual and in the drawing,
Mm-hmm.
meeting the individual, just trying to understand who's across from me. Some people are interesting, some people are, to me, I mean, and to anybody, it's just human, are not as interesting as you would want them to be, or as the next person.
Mm-hmm.
But it's life, and sometimes it's a challenge to find the interest in front of you,
Yeah.
or to find the interest in like it doesn't have to be a person. It could just be to find an interest in the ordinary. One of the things I also used to do on my job before I worked in this gouache sketchbook is in the summers I would go out to the park and paint, and
Nice.
you'd have to find the subject. Sometimes you got to let the subject find you. You got to find the interesting in the ordinary.
Yeah.
There's things that you see every day, and sometimes you got to learn to look at things again and say and find what's interesting in it.
Absolutely agree. It's a lot of life is learning how to hear or see, right?
Right, right.
and and that's the interesting thing. Like if you look through your work, I'm kind of curious. Like if you start to see like a pattern of things that kind of catch your attention more, often. Like for example, all the way at the bottom of your website, there's these two paintings. The guy with the trumpet,
Right.
and then there's this guy. I don't know. It looks like he's playing a flute or something, right?
Uh-huh.
And those are like two of the paintings that really jump out at me of your painting, although you have all this incredible work. Um, but there's something cool about like knowing that those people are actually making sounds,
Hmm.
and do you have other paintings of like people like of musicians,
Um,
or is it just those two?
yeah, no, there are other paintings of people, musicians. I think one of the things is that both those paintings
Mm-hmm.
and the paintings I've done with people who are playing instruments. There's another one with a woman playing an electric guitar, and
Hmm.
she was in the park playing. She had the setup with the speakers and everything in the park, because what I did was I had a camera. I would take my camera out and
Mm-hmm.
I would photograph the people around me on my job. All those were taken pictures. The reference for those paintings were taken during my lunch hour. I would go outside,
Okay.
the guy in the trumpet. And I would go out and meet and talk with these people.
Yeah.
There was another guy I painted. He was playing congas
Mm-hmm.
out, and this was out in the Wall Street area. And I did a charcoal drawing and an oil painting of it. And then after I finished, I made a copy of it and I brought it to the guy and I said, hey, this is what I did, just to get her to see how he felt about it. He was very happy with it. Um, the older guy playing the flute again, I bumped into him in the park a few times. I have not seen him for years. He's a very elderly man too.
Hmm.
So I don't know if he's still alive, but I thought he was very interesting to paint. I didn't think that in any of these I've done them justice. The subject was so interesting. I
Mm.
wouldn't mind revisiting again and trying to do something else with the reference that I had, because they were good subjects. And I think the painting did well because the subjects were so well too.
Tell me a little about this one painting. It says, "My mother at 92 years old." Is that your mom?
Yeah, yeah, that was a hard one.
Yeah. Tell me
Um,
about it.
my mom was, she was in a nursing home, and I was the only one here at the time. My siblings, they were either in Florida or Virginia,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and so I would go see. I promised them that I would see my mom often, which I did, and I would go there, and it was hard. I mean, I would go there and I would feed her.
Mm.
Then I would just sit with her, and what I tried to do was when I saw her, it's hard to talk about. I would bring some of the music that she used to listen to.
Mm.
And before then, my Spanish is not too good now. But before then, it wasn't. It was even worse. And but I got better at it because as my parents were, my father had passed away before her.
Mm.
My parents were passing away. I got into the music that they played and so forth, and I found out for my uncle, her brother, what are the music that she liked or the artists that she liked to listen to. So I would buy those things and bring those and play them for her,
Mm.
and sit in the room with her for a while. And then there was nothing really much for me to do. My mom couldn't really talk, you
Mm.
know. She was aware of her surroundings at some point. She suffered from dementia, though, that there were times where she did not recognize me as her son.
Oh wow.
And but I would sit there and I would draw her. So I
Mm.
did a whole bunch of drawings of my mom,
Mm.
you know, and yeah, that's where that comes from.
That's amazing, man. And that's a digital piece, right?
I don't know. Like I said, I did several, so I don't know
Okay.
which one you're looking at right now because I don't have it in
I'm
front.
looking at the one. It has like a tan background. And she has like a white cloth on, and then her hair's white, and um, the brushwork looks very digital as it gets around the edges. So that's kind of, and they're all like,
It could be. I,
yeah, it's digital because it's the same kind of mark repeated
uh-huh.
that a brush wouldn't do. Like, because the brush would be more organic, but this is kind of repeated.
Okay.
But man, it's incredible. It's incredible. Uh, my grandmother was I think maybe about 93, um,
Mm,
and at the time, and uh, one of the things I found amazing when I was with her at that time was she had like the thickest white hair, like ever, right? And I
Right.
was like, how the heck? It's like your hair is like more alive than you, right? And she had beautiful, thick white blonde. I mean blonde. It was like curls in it too, right? So when I see your mom here at 92 with that beautiful white hair, like, dang, man, that's that's incredible. Um, wow. And how long was her hair in that picture?
She had her hair. Um, it came to her shoulders.
Okay, okay, man, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Um, that's awesome. I love that. Uh, do you are you the only are you the black sheep in the family in terms of the art, or are there other people? You
No,
know.
my sister, my older sister used to draw as well.
Okay. Okay. You said used to. Is she not really engaging in it at this time, or?
She also passed away.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Dude, how old are you?
Oh, me, I am 57.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
57 this year.
You're still a baby, man. Um, 57 this year. Wow, wow. Sorry to hear about hear about that with your sister.
Thank you.
Um, so your sister, when you guys were younger, did you guys draw together and kind of have?
No, no. When I was younger, I had an older brother and sister. Both of them had moved out by the time I was, by the time I was a preteen, basically.
Mm,
On occasion, my sister would, because my sister had two children that were near my age.
okay.
So
Okay,
she would,
gotcha.
we would, as kids, we would sleep over there. I had a sister who was just a year younger than me, and another brother who was a couple of years younger than me.
So I
So
gotta ask, how old was your mom when she had you, man?
my mom was, I think she was 40
Okay,
or 40
that's
something.
cool.
Mhm.
That's interesting, man. That's interesting. That's neat. And you just had a brother and a sister, or did you have like? Uh,
I had two sisters and two brothers.
okay, very cool. Very cool. I know our Puerto Rican families can get big sometimes. My grandmother came from 32 children. She's the oldest of 32.
Wow, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I guess her dad had two families and 16 from each wife. And
Well, that happened in Puerto Rico in those old days, you know.
yeah, yeah,
Same thing with my granddad.
yeah.
Yep, yep. He had with my grandmother. I'm not sure how many children they were there, but gosh, it's one, two, three, four, five, at least seven kids, possibly more. And then he had another family.
Hmm.
They had kids from there, and the odd thing is that they all got along.
I know, right? My grandfather had or I guess my grandfather also. Yeah, I guess he also had two wives. So he had one. He had my grandmother on one side of the mountain, and then on the other side of the mountain was the other wife, right?
There you go. The same
And
thing.
he's coming around the mountain with it. No, but and I guess when he passed, uh, the his other wife was ill, I think, at the time, and so my grandmother helped her. And then when my grandmother got ill, she helped it. And even though they didn't even know of each other most of their life, they ended up caring for each other out of care for the same man that they were with. It was
Right,
a
right.
very interesting thing. Um, so. I have to commend you, Gil. I find this, I find you fascinating, man. Um, a lot of people who wouldn't be working in the field would not end up having the discipline or the passion to continue producing work at the level that you do, without making it their career. And I have to commend you on that. there's a beauty in you for doing that, and I'm very impressed with you.
Thank you.
um, do any of your kids pursue the arts?
No, I have a younger son, Jason, who likes to draw occasionally.
Hmm.
But both of these kids have an older son too. Both of them are mostly into manga,
Okay.
anime, things like that, things that are more cartoony, rather than looking at real life.
Sure.
Um, and I try to encourage my son to draw as much as they like, but at the same time, they're both into game design and
Mm-hmm.
looking into game programming. My oldest son goes to college for computer science, and he's
Oh well.
looking into programming. My youngest son is still in high school, and he's still kind of finding his way and
Mm-hmm.
finding what his interests are.
That's cool. The manga. That's that Japanese stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's their version of your comics, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was younger, the first time I ever met my drawing master, I was about 17, and so I call him up, and he does this interview over the phone, and he says, "So young man," um, he's like, "What is it that why do you want to be an artist or something like that?" And I said, "Well, I really like drawing the figure because I would, look at comic books all the time, and I thought it was cool."
Right.
And he's like, "You like drawing the figure?" He's like, "What books have you read? Uh, who's your favorite artist for the figure drawing?" Right. And I didn't know anything. I was an idiot, right? And and uh, and then I thought, okay, well, it's not necessarily the figure. I like comics. Well, who's your favorite comic artist? How many comics have you read? What comic? And he just starts grilling me with all these questions.
Right.
And I'm like, well, yeah, and he's like, that's what I thought. A typical teenager, only interested in nipples and pubic hair. I'm like, ah! He's like, come to the studio, we'll see what we can do. And no,
That's funny. That's funny.
yeah, he uh, he threw a brick through my glass world. Oh, um, so tell me a couple stories around some of the teachers that you had that were really influential.
Oh wow. Like I
I know you got
said,
a bunch.
well, I really the one that I credit the most, like I mentioned before, was Erwin Greenberg.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot from him, and I continue to learn because he didn't just teach me how to draw, kind of helped me with a direction.
Mm,
He was a great teacher, and one of the things about him, this is the High School of Art and Design. You had different students, and all of them are at a different place.
mm-hmm.
Some can draw better than others. Some can, don't draw and as well as others, or paint as well as others. But he was able to go to each individual student and kind of tailor what needs to be taught to that student, where that student was at.
Mm,
And that's a very unique thing, rather than being able to like try to guide a classroom through one lesson.
mm-hmm.
What we did was we worked from the model, and we also and during the time the model was posing, he would come around to each individual student and sit down with them and give them some direction, make some corrections on their painting, and also let them know where to go afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things that I always enjoyed was we had this watercolor class that he taught for 2 periods. And when the first period was over, he called the class to the back of the room, and we all gathered. And there he would share something about an artist or an
Mm-hmm.
illustrator. And so it was more than just what he knew himself personally, as far as as far as what his own abilities, he can impart to other people. It's also opening a window to what other artists have done. Was there where the students were introduced to Velasquez, to
Mm,
Sorolla, to Sargent, to Vermeer, to Rembrandt, to Norman Rockwell, to Dean Cornwell, to J.C. Leyendecker, to
mm-hmm.
just a ton of different artists and illustrators who basically it was people who worked from life um, and uh, um, and made pictures, from the world around them. And so it was a big influence on me and a lot of the other the students there. And I remembered he said something that stuck with me, because he said, what, the thing that he wants to give each and every student is a moment in time where they were able to do things beyond what they thought they were capable of, where
Ah,
they could,
beautiful.
break that ceiling and say, hey, wherever they're at as an artist,
Mm-hmm.
that if they can get past a certain point, they've accomplished something. And he said that's a memory that they will take with them for the rest of their lives.
Mm, mm. I love
So,
that. I love
yeah,
that.
it was a great class. And you know what? The students that came out of it, a lot have gone on to do well. Some have gone on to work in the comic book industry,
Mm-hmm.
in Marvel Comics, DC Comics. Some have gone on into the fine arts world. Some have gone on into the illustration field, and so forth. Some are even teaching right now in places like the Art Students League and so forth. So it was a great place to be around. It was him and this other guy, this other instructor, Max Ginsberg, and then there was later on there was Herb Doctor, who was also part of this, and they had that early morning paint group where they kind of tapped individual students, say, hey, you know what, you might be interested in coming here and working, and then you got more individual instruction, and then you were around students who were really good at what they did. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes some of those students would turn around and teach. Those who were ahead would teach as well. And so we learned from each other. We learned from the instructors, and it was a very unique thing, especially to have in the city high school.
Yeah. So that was all, yeah, like you said, at a high school level.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool. Um, I used to work at well, I guess it was a high school and a middle school where it was like Fame, right? Where you had the arts and it was an arts centric place. But I would love to see a place like the one like you're talking about, or there's one also in Florida. I mean, where just the talent um, of the teachers that are being pulled together have this kind of influence.
Right. The
Uh,
incredible thing is, the High School of Art and Design, it's still there in Manhattan,
mm,
and some of those students who are part of that experience are teaching there now,
oh wow.
and they carry on that tradition, and they do well, and I see it in the students that come out of there as well. It's still producing. It's still,
Hmm.
it's still helping students to get beyond a certain point and either realize that they can that they can be artists and participate in that, or walk away with a memory of something that's very special.
There's an image here, some done for Inktober. Inktober. Um, there's I don't know if he looks like a kind of like a pirate with his little pirate hat on.
Uh-huh.
Um, that you have it done in black and white. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh
Um,
gosh, pirates is a kind of,
I guess you have a bunch of them.
yeah.
Um, it says GR October 25th, 2015. he looks like like he belongs on a boat. Um, but it's ink work. It's just black and white.
Right.
But I love the way you have what do they call it? Cross contour. Like you have these lines um, in the face that make up the texture of the skin.
Right.
Also the texture in a hat. Like where did you pick up that hatching technique?
Looking at old illustrators,
Mm,
liked a lot of pen and ink artists, Franklin Booth, Joseph Clement Cole, Bernie Wrightson, especially when he did Frankenstein. But that was a lot of it was influenced by Franklin Booth as well. Yeah, different pen and ink artists, Charles Dana Gibson, um, gosh, Will Crawford. There's a ton that I used to just love to look at. I love drawing in pen and ink.
hmm
You know,
So what kind of advice like would you give an artist who would be interested in developing that pen and ink feel?
well, it sounds, I don't know, cliche, but practice, practice, and having it's just not it's not like a mindless practice. But you know what? One of the things I do with my sketchbooks,
Hmm
especially with these gouache sketchbooks, that I started just a little while back. I made up my mind to have a sketchbook devoted to a particular medium, and I picked gouache. And
Mm,
the thing that I decided was that when I start the first page, that was going to be the start of making each page better than the last. Doesn't always work, but that was always my goal and my aim was that as I continued to turn the page, I was going to try and outdo what I did, try and take it a step further. So one of the things I love doing the whole concept of the Inktober thing, but what I didn't enjoy about doing it was that I always wanted to do more, and
mm,
because you had to just go on to the next one and go on to the next one, that there's something to be said for doing something every day, but it can't just be, in my view,
yeah.
it can't just be just haphazard. There always has to be a discipline that goes with, you want to be better, you want to do better. You don't just want to throw lines on a paper for the sake of throwing lines on the paper. So I understand that some people believe that. I,
hmm
I rather would believe in the discipline of just trying to, if you're going to do something, continue to make it better than what you did the last time.
Yeah. That would be a cool contest, like let's say Ink October '02 or whatever, right?
Mm,
Where rather than doing it every day, you choose one image, you take 1 week to accomplish it. The next week you do the same image but you improve it, and you do a third week and a fourth week. And so by the end of the month, you've done the same image 4 times, but you've improved it each time.
right,
And that would be fascinating to see the like you were saying, like it's cool when Inktober comes around because you see all this work flooding your Facebook pages and stuff, and it's
right,
cool. But it'd be cool if there was a competition like that where you could actually focus on like high quality, high standards of excellence rather than just getting something done.
right.
Yeah, that would be neat. Um, so Gil, like, is that your name, or
Yeah,
is there more to it?
no, I've heard that ever since ever since I had the name. It's just Gill. Of course, in Spanish, the G is pronounced H.
Yeah, Hill.
Yeah.
I was thinking like Hilbert or something,
Uh,
Hilberto or something. Just Gil.
just Gill.
What do you want to name your boy? Gil. There. Just point. I love it. That's beautiful. And how do you say your last name?
Robles.
Robles. Now, what does that mean?
I have no idea.
It's probably like rubies in Spanish. Robles. Um, Gil Robles. That's beautiful, man. So, tell me. Well, because your work, I was gonna ask you your gouache. Where do you get it from? Is there a special type of gouache that you're using?
I like there's a Turner designer gouache
Mm-hmm.
I like using because when it covers very well. You know, the opacity of the gouache comes out nice, and that it also depends on the particular color that you buy.
Mm.
I settle on a particular palette as I went along, and I choose the colors for one I check if they're light fast that they won't be what's called fugitive colors that they fade eventually when they're
Mm.
exposed to the light. So I choose colors that are more light fast, and there's a grading system that you can see on the tubes to check for that. And then after experiencing the color or just working with it, just seeing which the colors that are that that cover well.
Mm-hmm.
They like if you're going to paint over something, it covers what's underneath well, or like sometimes it's all right to let something show through, but I can do that by just adding more water. I'd rather that the paint um, is opaque like I expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I would use mostly Turner gouache, Winsor & Newton designer colors as well.
Mm-hmm.
Holbein, I'll just look around, um, and I'll try to buy the type of paints that are artist quality paints
Mm-hmm.
because they have less fillers in it, or less things that more it's a more pure paint than the student grade. So the Holbein, the Winsor Newton, the Turner designer gouache, um, there are others I just can't remember them offhand.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then with that, are there brushes that you would recommend looking at as well?
No, no, just for me it's really individual.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain brushes that I like to use, like the Princeton brushes that I get at Blick.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Let me see. Um, that's all I can think of right now.
That's cool. And you called them what?
Princeton.
Princeton, like Jersey.
Mm.
Princeton brushes. That's cool, man. That's cool. Um, so if you could, let's say, you know, you tripped while walking down the street and you end up falling and you fell on a lottery ticket. And you're like, oh my gosh, I know this number. That's the lottery. That's the one that went last night. And and you went around, you asked 300 people, and they're like, no, it's not my ticket. It's all yours. And so now you're free and clear, and you go and you win the lottery. You don't got to work another day in your life. What what would you do regarding your artwork? Like, if you had an opportunity to like take your art and fulfill a dream or a hope or do something extraordinary with it, what would you choose to do?
Wow. I guess what I would do would just go someplace where I can paint.
Mm,
Um, I would think of doing landscapes. I would think of just painting from life and just produce art. And you know, one of the things I like to also do is I kind of like I said I've worked in so many different mediums.
mm-hmm,
Whether it's digital or traditional mediums. I've had gouache, watercolor, oil paints. I've used acrylics. I've used pen and ink. I've done what you might call it, printing.
mm-hmm,
As far as etchings are concerned and stuff like that.
wow.
I just like to explore different things. I've worked in casein. Uh, um,
Now, what's casein? You mentioned that before, and I thought I
Casein
might
is
have known it.
similar
Go.
to gouache. It's similar to gouache. It's a milk-based paint, so
Huh?
it has a very funny smell to it, very sweet smell to it. But and you have to work on a very on a thick board. It's not a good idea to work on a canvas because it'll crack. The paint will crack, but it will last a good long time. It kind of
It's like an enamel.
no fresco, like a fresco painting.
Okay, okay,
It,
got you,
it
got you.
but you can build up. You can work opaquely with it, and you can build up. Like it's more closely associated to oils. There's an illustrator named Harry Anderson
Mm-hmm.
who developed an allergy to oils.
Oh wow.
So he
Okay.
wound up using caseins, and you couldn't tell the difference of his casein and his oil paintings. It's very, very similar. He couldn't tell if it was gouache, casein, or oil. He, did very, very beautiful paintings in this medium. So it was, I've used that as well. So I would look to, I don't know, probably some things I haven't used before, some things I haven't used in a while, and just spend my time painting and drawing.
That's beautiful. And if you could go out and say, okay, I have 5 years. I can only paint for the next 5 years. What would you like? Would you stay in Bronx, or would you go to Puerto Rico? Would you go to South Africa? Like where would you love to go and be part of the culture while you're painting that environment?
That's a funny question. My wife always asks, she wants to move out of New York. She always asks, where do you want to live? And I'm like, I don't know.
He's
You
like, hint,
know,
hint.
I don't know. I mean, I would love to see, there's a bunch of places I would love to see. I'd love to see Hawaii. I
Mm,
would love to uh, uh, see certain parts of South America.
mm-hmm.
I would love to see, New Zealand, you know, and places here in the United States that I haven't traveled to. I've never been to any of the national parks.
Oh, interesting.
Someplace like Yellowstone,
Uh-huh.
just to be around, um, just to be around, nature. I think that would be a good thing to do. You know.
Yeah. There's you might want to write this down if you got a pencil around you. It's a
Okay.
website called Air, AIR,
Uh
and
huh.
then PANO. Um,
PANO.
yeah, so it's like for panorama. So what it is, it's high def 360 images from like maybe a drone or something. And you just type in a place in the world that you want to go, and you can blow it
Oh,
up to the size of your screen, and you just feel like you're there. And I used to run this enrichment at the school, and we call it the Artist Cafe. And every week we go to another place, just another country. We go to China, or
right.
places in Africa, and you just get and we have this huge digital board, so it's like you feel like you're immersed in it, and then we would just sketch it, and I give the students a couple criteria of what I was looking for and things. But check that website out and just play around with it. There might be something that really jumps out at you and says, "Come visit me, come paint me."
Right. Okay. I will. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So, Gil, I have one last question for you.
Uh huh.
It's the most important question of this entire interview.
Go ahead.
You gotta talk to me about some pig, man. You gotta talk to me about some pig. No, what what do you like to eat?
ah, love pernil, uh,
And
or lechon, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. Arroz con gandules,
mm,
pernil. My mom used to make this chicken stew that I used to. When I was a
mm,
kid, I didn't appreciate it as much, but now I love it. She used to make this carne guisado with either beef or chicken
mm.
with rice. I would love to have her pasteles right now.
Oh, hey.
She made
With
those.
ketchup on it or no?
No. Okay.
I'll tell you a funny story about pastel. I never liked them. Okay, And when I was in Puerto Rico, I stayed at this hostel in Rio Piedras, and Maddie was the older lady who ran the hostel, and so she invited my buddy and I up in the morning for pasteles, and I was so I could barely sleep the night before because I'm like I I don't want to be trapped in there and like not have this good experience, right? And I'm
Right.
like, how do I escape? And I couldn't, and so she's like, come up, you guys. And so we went upstairs, and she was like in her little muumuu dress, the little flower, guela dress,
Uh-huh.
and being Puerto Rican, she had a knife that was bigger than her arm, and and so she goes over, and she picks up this big knife and she slams it into the top of a can, and because she didn't have a can opener, she just used this big knife, and and I'm like still trying to figure out how to get out of this thing because I don't want to insult her, right? So she lays the pastilla down, and I'm like, oh my god! And then she goes over to the cabinet, and and then she turns around, and she has this, I don't know, it must have been like a 2 liter bottle of ketchup, and because Puerto Ricans are known for putting ketchup on everything, and she put that down, and I was like, oh, wait a second, put some on there, ate it. It was the most like yummiest thing ever. And so I can't eat pasteles without ketchup,
Right, right.
but with them, for me it totally changes it, and I'm just like yes. But maybe I just didn't have any good one. Maybe your mama made the best. Do you cook Puerto Rican food, or you just eat it?
No, on occasion I cook for my family. My wife's not Puerto Rican. My children, they don't know the culture as well, But like for Christmas, or Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
the Benin was the turkey, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would make the pernil, arroz con gandules. I would make
Mm.
bacalaíto.
Mm.
On occasion I made them a flan. I made
Oh,
arroz con
we were just
dulce.
we were just talking about flan earlier today.
Okay.
So tell me, I've never made pernil, right? And I'm going to pronounce it like an American, pernil. And for those who are listening, what that is basically like it's kind of like a ham, right? It's just
Roast pork. Roast
it's
pork.
roast pork, but the skin gets nice and crispy and hard, and you got that fat underneath there, and you just, oh my god, it's so delicious. And actually, it was funny. A long years ago, I met this Egyptian girl, and she was a Muslim, and we got very very close, and I was going to consider marrying her, but for me to do that I had to become a Muslim, right?
Right.
So I said, okay, well, let me see if this religion is compatible with my faith. And so I kind of began to study it, and read the whole Quran, and things like that. And Thanksgiving came around, and my ex-wife, I was still very close with her family, and so they invited me over for Thanksgiving, and there was the pernil, and I bit into it. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't give up the pork. I apologize. So so I never became Muslim because I'm too Puerto Rican when it comes to that. But so I want to make a pernil. I want to make one. So what would you suggest? Like, give me some. Like, how would you cook it? What kind of things would you tell somebody to look out for, and how would you make it good?
Well, I basically got it. How I cooked it, I asked my uncle.
Okay.
Uncle was a cook. He worked as a cook in a restaurant. And when my family first came from Puerto Rico, I was still young. They were my mother and her siblings were the first generation.
Mm,
So we all used to gather together, and we'd all used to go to my uncle's house, who was the cook,
mm-hmm.
and he had a house, so we would all go over there, and he would cook for the family. And so I asked him, how do you make pernil? And so he said, what you do is that, you when you buy the pork, you figure you're going to have it in the oven for each pound. It's half an hour.
Okay.
That's just a general thing, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
then also I remembered my mom would make would prepare the meat, wash the meat, make some gashes in the meat to put the seasonings in,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And also I would take the skin. I would peel the skin back with a knife
Mm.
so that I can put the seasonings, between that layer, the
And
fat.
what kind of seasoning? You gotta tell me what the seasoning.
Well, there's adobo.
Uh-huh.
That's adobo. I would use garlic seasoning.
Mm.
I would still put some pepper,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, I would make my own thing up with
Sure.
garlic
It could be
seasoning.
anything basically.
Yeah.
Now, would you
Uh,
like take those seasons, like seasoning, and like mix it in with butter so you can smear it up on the inside,
no, no, no.
or you
What I
just
would
keep it
do,
dry?
no, no. What I would do, I would rub it with olive oil and
Okay. Oh,
also with
gotcha.
minced garlic,
Oh,
olive
okay.
oil and minced garlic, and then put the seasonings in and prepare it. Then I might let it, sit for a while so the seasonings can soak in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put the oven to 375
375.
and just cook it slowly. Usually it would take anywhere from 4 to 5 hours.
Mm.
I would have it covered in aluminum foil for the first, like if it was a 4 hours, I would cover it for the first 3 hours
Mm-hmm.
and uncover it for the last hour. Then,
Mm.
I would cut into the meat, make sure that it was fully cooked before I served it.
Sure. And then, and so you just let it cook in that 375 the whole time. Would you ever broil the top, like to make it even more crispy, or
At the end,
for about like how long? Couple minutes, or?
for anywhere from 20 to 15 minutes.
Okay, good, good, good. Oh man, I know what I'm doing this next weekend. Uh, so, um, uh, there's a little church group that I belong to, a little church family, and
Mhm.
when I grew up, my father would cook these incredible meals for us every Sunday. And as I got older, I was like, man, like, we got 7 boys, then we got older, we had wives and kids, and he'd always do this, right? And then I realized, like, man, this guy spends a fortune every week, feeding us all. But he loved to do it because it brought his family, and it was a gift that he gave us.
Right.
And now that I'm so many hours away from them, um, I ended up joining this little church family, and we meet each other's homes, and so afterwards we fellowship and we cook and things like that. And so I've just kind of committed that I want to love them as my father loved me, right? And
Oh,
so I'll
okay.
spend 6 hours, 12 hours baking, cooking, coming up with like high end dishes, and
Right.
and I just love being in the in the kitchen, in the atmosphere of knowing that I'm getting to love people through food.
Mhm.
And so I really appreciate you sharing the pernil with me, because it's something I really, really want to, just do something really beautiful and take, to.
Well, there's a website.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Rican Chef.
The Rican chef.
The
Oh,
Rican
whoa.
Chef. You look that up, um, and has a lot of recipes.
All right. Let's see. Oh, wait. Am I not spelling it right? Did I miss an I? Oh, yeah. I think I missed the second I there. Hmm. Spell it for me.
Rican Chef, Rican.
CAN and then CH. Oh, let me see. Google. The
Oh,
Rican.
it's El Boricua.
Oh, okay.
ElBoricua.com. Used to be called the Rican Chef.
Um. All right. Perfect, man. This is awesome. Oh, there he is. Yeah, 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 yeah. Beautiful, man. You can make some tostones, some mofongo. Ah! Oh man. you're making me happy. I just found I was at the art museum the other day, and there was this couple. She's Argentine, and the artist, the husband was from Dominican Republic. But they were just telling me they were eating at this Puerto Rican place, and I'm like, "Where there's a Puerto Rican place, right?" And, and so they say the name, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I always thought that was a Mexican place for some reason," and so I'm looking forward to going there and crying a little bit.
Okay.
I miss the food. Um, Yeah, well, man, this was a great conversation, man. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you would like to share and about your journey and about art or life with us?
Oh gosh, I can't think of anything offhand right now.
All right. Well, man, I just I just wish blessings on you, man. That's
Thank you.
I love your. There's something about you that you're touching me, man. You're touching me. So, uh, like I said earlier, I'm just very impressed. It's like years and years ago, I struggled with art and capitalism. And I love capitalism.
Right.
I just was trying to figure out because when I was growing up, everybody was like, "Oh, you need to be an artist. You need to be an artist." And I was like, I don't want to do that, right? But I struggled because I had this skill set, right? This ability, and it was a very frustrating thing. And I think I was maybe about 19, 20, 21, somewhere in there. And I just remember sitting down asking myself the question, is it okay for me to produce art and not make a career out of it? Like not have to be a money making thing or a business or something that I capitalize on.
Hmm.
And is that okay? Am I squandering my talent? And I came to the conclusion that no, it's okay because some artists, in doing that, you actually give yourself an opportunity to keep it pure, right? And just be in that experience for the experience itself without having to add any other job to it. And
Right. Right. I think of it, you know what, you do it because it's what you are. If you're
yeah,
an artist, you're an artist. So you're gonna. If you were a musician and you played an instrument, you're always going to play that instrument.
mm,
There are people who will never become professional basketball players, but they love to go to the court and play. It's the same thing with art. I mean,
yeah,
and you never know. Vermeer was not a successful artist in his lifetime.
mm,
You know, he had to open a bar to make ends
really?
meet. Yeah.
What?
Um,
Interesting.
I hope I don't have my artist crossed. For a time where Rembrandt, at the end of his life, went bankrupt, his
Mm-hmm.
son Titus got him a position as a bank teller. You
What?
know, yeah. So, I mean, you never know where life is going to take you, but if you're an artist, that's your identity. That's
Yeah,
who you are, and regardless of whether you make money at it or not, it's something that you're always going to do.
yeah,
That's kind of the way I look at it. Now, I would love to make a living out of my art because that would free me up
sure,
to make more art
sure.
and to get better. Because the point of my making pictures is not just to make pictures, not to make paintings to hang on the wall. It's part of it, but it's to be better.
Mm,
So it's just like you don't you want to grow in this particular discipline. You want to get better at what you're at what you're doing, because what's the point of doing the same thing over and over again?
mm-hmm.
You want to. It's all right, like like if you do the same subject matter, but you do it better.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
what's something at this time in your journey that you're looking at it and say, wow, I'm really good at this. This is really good. This is top notch, but I want to be better at this. Like what would one of those things be?
I don't think it's for me. I don't not think of any particular thing.
Okay.
It's just getting better at all of it.
Okay.
I like painting people a lot. that's kind of my favorite thing, just to do portraits, to paint people, paint
Hmm.
figures, and as naturally as possible. And I think one of the things that I guess I'm looking for in the work that I do is kind of a medium between trying to really render something convincingly, but not over laboring it,
Mm,
so that it retains some kind of spontaneity or freshness that kind of when you look at a Soroya,
hmm.
and it's just all sunlight and these brilliant brushstrokes, or a sergeant in the same way, where he can solve things in fewer brushstrokes than it would take most artists to do. You know,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
so you have that kind of confidence when you lay down the paint to that even though you may have struggled with it, you know, um, other people would look at it and say, "Wow, he just did it with just a few brushstrokes. How did he do that?" You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just having that thing that what it might have been difficult to do, but no one knows that but you.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a quote from Michelangelo that says, "You know what? How he remarked how people thought his work was so marvelous, but they would not have thought it so marvelous if they knew how much work he put into it."
Hmm. Hmm. That's it. It's like anything, as a designer, you know, I always tell people like the more work you put into it, the less work the client or the end user or your audience has to do. And the less work that they have to do, the greater experience they have.
Mhm.
And so if you don't take on that mantle, that responsibility, that discipline to do as much of the work for them as possible, then you make it harder on them, and then they get fatigued. They don't feel at peace. There's a weight on them when they're looking at your work, and if they can't articulate or become conscious of why that is, then they will most likely just walk away from it, right, or
Right.
not choose it. And it's because the artist in a way became lazy and put the responsibility on the audience
Mhm.
versus taking that, as the professional, taking that onto themselves and giving a much more beautiful experience to the
Right.
end user. So, uh, Gil, on the idea of food, I'm going to say bien provecho,
Uh,
and I just thank you, man, and this was a beautiful, beautiful conversation.
thank
Thank you
you.
for your time. Okay.
Thank you. All right.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlying structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.